one of the strangest figures in the history of the American West, known by the nickname the Cannibal. His story remains a mystery to this day. In 1874, America was in turmoil due to the gold rush, and people were selling everything they had and heading west in search of quick wealth. Amid this madness, there was a man named Alfred Packer, a poor and reckless man, barely getting by, who decided to embark on this adventure in the harsh, frozen mountains of Colorado with 5 other men, all sharing one dream: gold. Packer, along with 5 men, none of whom had any experience surviving in the wilderness, but greed led them to throw themselves into peril. They set out in the bitter winter, with snow covering everything, and the cold cutting through their bones like knives. At first, they were excited, talking about the future that awaited them when they found gold. But as the days passed, their food began to run out, their water froze, and their dream journey turned into a nightmare. Hunger began to bear its fangs. Their eyes sunk, their bodies weakened, and each of them began to look at the others with unnatural stares. They tried to hunt anything, but there wasn't even a rabbit in the freezing ice. Tensions rose, and suspicion crept in among them. One pitch-black night, with the wind howling around the cabin they were hiding in, the unthinkable happened. One of them collapsed from hunger and died, and that's when the devilish idea turned into reality. "Guys, this corpse could be our lifeline." No one wanted to be the first to suggest eating it, but their eyes said it all. One by one, they began to devour the corpse, and instead of 6 men, there were now 5. Then, hunger continued to grow, the fear of death surrounded them, and everyone became suspicious of everyone else. Packer would look at his friend sleeping next to him, his mind saying, "I have to survive." And one day, his companions began disappearing one after the other. Did they die naturally? Did someone kill them? No one knows, but what is known is that Packer was the sole survivor, and he had the belongings of the men who had disappeared. When Packer returned to town, he looked terrifying, his clothes torn, and his face pale as if he had seen death itself. People asked him, "Where are the others?" He said they had died of hunger and left him alone. But a hunter found the men's bodies in the mountains, and the shock came when he saw the bodies were dismembered and partially eaten. Suspicions grew, and people began to talk, but the conclusive evidence came when one of the men who had traveled with Packer before the trip said that Packer had spoken about cannibalism as if it were something normal. The police began connecting the dots, and when they confronted him, his story was inconsistent and confused. Sometime later, a local man spotted a stranger spending a lot of money in a tavern, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be Packer himself. The police chased him, but he escaped and lived in hiding for 9 years, changing his appearance and avoiding anyone who might recognize him. But in the end, he fell into the trap and was arrested in another state after the police issued a bulletin with his description and a reward. Someone recognized him and turned him in. The judge, upon seeing him, said a strange line: "You killed your friends and ate them." And there, he was sentenced to death. He kept appealing the verdict with the help of the best lawyers of the time, and they managed to change the sentence from execution to life imprisonment. But eventually, he was executed. Did he really kill them and eat their flesh? Or was he just a survivor of a horrific disaster who had to do this to survive? No one knows the truth, but what was clear was that after returning from the trip, his financial situation was completely different. Packer's name was etched in history as one of the first cannibals in America. Strangely, in 1901, he was pardoned, but he died a few years later. His story is still told to this day, and the terrifying question remains: if you were in his place, what would you have done?